Alright, so here's another photo editing technique. It's actually very similar to the last one with the blue jacket and the Lombard Street, but I'm just kind of adding additional management and just kind of the different variations of the different techniques. Anyhow, this is a photo of my son. He must have been, oh, I don't know. Shoot, it's been so long, maybe 7 years old, 8 years old. Anyway, I had him pose for me and purposely took a pretty, not so great photograph. Is pretty, there isn't any like brights and darks. And so we want to kind of go ahead and edit it and try to enhance this particular image. And your final image should look similar to this. And don't worry if it's not exact, but so this is what I did. I mean, I'm pushing it really, really far right now just to kind of show you all the capabilities of Photoshop. So, and one technique I want you to be mindful of is I am now putting all the layers in a separate folder so that you can isolate parts of the image so that it only affects things within that layer. So anyhow, I'm going to turn that off and I'm going to kind of walk you through the process. So first thing I want to do is I want to create a new folder group, and maybe this is the, I don't know, maybe you might call that headshot edit or something like that. And in here you have no layers in here, 0 layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the background layer and then drag it into the folder. So now this folder, so whatever I do, it only affects things that are in this folder. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and take my original photograph and I want to put a curve filter on it. So in the past on the other one we went down here and then we went to image adjustment and we did a curve layer. So this is okay, but when you do this you're actually affecting that particular layer. So here I'm going to do this and I'm just going to do that. So what I did was I made a curve adjustment and I physically alter the pixels of that photograph, and if I wanted to get it back I couldn't, and although I have a background copy. So instead of editing, we call, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call that destructive editing, meaning you're actually editing the actual pixels of the image. So now I'm going to teach you how to do a non-destructive editing where you're adding another layer on top of it and making that layer affect the layer below it. So hopefully that'll make sense. So I'm going to click this layer, the image that I want to edit, and instead of going up here to edit, adjustment, curve, I'm going to come down here to adjustment layer and I'm going to put in a curve adjustment layer on top. So what it's doing is that it's giving me an adjustment function here, and this function is affecting the layer below it. It's kind of as a filter. So think of it as kind of putting on a pair of sunglasses over that original image. So I can do the same edit, meaning bring out super high highlights and maybe bring in some dark, like that, and really push this curve. And if I don't like that edit, I just turn it off. You see how that works? So this is a lot more, flexible way of editing your photograph, and so that you're not destroying the original pixels in the photograph and you are just adding to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a curve layer, and I like to really kind of take on this kind of S curve. You could be as aggressive as you want to it, so what that does is that it really brings the brightness out a lot, and then it also brings down the darkness a lot deeper. So you can see what it looks without it, my original photo, and here it looks like it was in a sunny day, but I have some really, really deep contrast. So again, I know I'm pushing it pretty hard on these filters, but I just wanted you to see the difference on the screen. After the curve adjustment layer, I think I'm going to go in with a vibrance. Oh, by the way, these adjustment filters, these 4 things do very similar things. You see how they're kind of broken up into brackets? So these things have to do with either adding light or darkness to your photograph, and they all kind of do it slightly differently, but in effect they're the same. This has to do with changes of color, whether it's hue, saturation, brightness of the color, converting into monochromatic, black and white, and things like that. And then these are some kind of wild filters. I don't use them often. And then up here are just kind of another transparency, a solid color or a pattern transparency. So, but for the most part with the photos, you're going to be within these two kind of brackets. So I'm going to come in with a vibrance. So when you go to vibrance, you'll see the properties for that vibrance filter here. If you don't see it, you're going to go to Windows and then click on the Properties tab. So on the vibrance, let me see here. I think I'm going to kind of go old school and kind of desaturate it a little bit, kind of deaden the color, maybe increase the saturation. So again, you can kind of see the difference of what it does. It's very subtle. Hopefully you guys can see it. But I think it brought some of the natural colors back, and it kind of made this almost a grayscale. So yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to dig that. And then I'm going to kind of put in a overlay on top of it, on top of the vibrance. I'm going to do like a solid color fill. And if we wanted to go old school, we can get kind of a yellowish, let's see, kind of like, let's try that. And just try different colors. And then, so obviously right now I have a layer that it has this kind of a pukey green on top, and you can't see anything below it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and multiply that layer, and it gives me that, right? So I'm putting this kind of greenish filter to it. And then, if the green is too much for you, you can just double click that and, change it. So you get this kind of, maybe this old school yellow. That's cool. Now if that's too much, also you can bring down the kind of the intensity of that particular fill layer by bringing the opacity down. So it's just ever so subtle, just bringing some of that warmth back. And then let's see, and then let's just push it a little bit further with more levels. So I'm actually kind of doing a curve again, but now I'm going to do, instead of curve, I'm going to do a levels. Levels is a lot easier. This is all the, I believe, the blacks, true black, and then the true white. So there isn't very much information on the true white, so I'm going to bring this in, and it's actually taking away pixels, so I want you guys to be careful. And then I could kind of, edge it out like that. And what does that look like without it? Yeah, it just brought back more highlights here. Maybe it's too hard, I don't know. So anyway, it's also going to be to your kind of taste, right? In general, you want your edit to be very subtle. Again, I'm pushing it pretty hard right now, but in general, you want your edits to be pretty subtle. And then, let's say you want to kind of fade some of the stuff out on the side. Another kind of a trick that I do is I'll put in a gradient filter on top of that. And right now it's linear, meaning it's going from like dark to transparent. So I'm going to go to radial, and then you see how you got the kind of the black, and then it goes to white. So I'm going to hit reverse, so it goes from white to black, and then I'm just going to click somewhere here so that I can just kind of do that. So basically I'm saying don't change anything here, and then just kind of fade away to nothing, or like I don't want to see a whole lot of that, right? So I can just kind of go to the spot that I want to really focus on, and then maybe I'm going to enlarge the, so you can see now the gray, is taking up some of that. So I'll just click OK. And again, with it, without it, take it or leave it, right? But I'm just kind of letting the edges fade out. So there is one sample of kind of doing additional editing with the added benefit of having all the filters in one folder. And so here is with all the new edit versus the original photo. It's a pretty big difference, I think. All right, guys, please have fun, and I'll see you in the next demo.